500 Whitus Avenue, Austin, Texas. KVRX broadcasts at 3,000 watts and 91.7 megahertz every weekday from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. and on weekends from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. KVRX shares its frequency with KOOP Radio. KVRX also streams online 24/7. KVRX values continued support and funding from listeners like you. Donations may be made out to the University of Texas and sent to KVRX Student Radio, P.O. Box D, Austin, Texas 78713-7209, or online at kvrx.org. KVRX would like to remind its listeners that all content expressed during programming does not necessarily reflect the views of KVRX, its DJs, underwriters, or the University of Texas at Austin. KVRX, your Texas Independent Music Authority. Good evening, sweet world, and welcome to Mark My Words. I'm your host, Mark Skoll Jr., and at 7:25, I'll be kicking it to Brooks and Cal for the high school basketball playoff coverage. Welcome to tonight's show. Glad to have you back for another week. First, to start things off, I want to talk about the Derrick Rose and Patrick Kane injuries. Like I said, I'm the big Chicago sports guy. Derrick Rose suffered a torn meniscus and is out. And now, after surgery today, they decided that they would his meniscus would be shaved and not repaired, meaning he would be back in 4 to 6 weeks. If it was repaired, he would be out for the season. And now that it's shaved, that he can come back with some time left in the regular season and possibly the postseason, which is great for Bulls fans. It's good to see. I know Nate Robinson is on the market, and that's probably who they're going to sign to replace Derrick Rose for these 4 to 6 weeks. But it's good to hear that Derrick Rose will be back, especially when finding out the news that he was hurt. It was devastating for me. I know it was devastating for most basketball fans because Derrick Rose is a guy who puts in his best effort day in and day out, and it's just sad to see a guy who puts his best effort in. He does nothing but have passion for the game, and then he tears another ligament in his knee. It's sad. It's very sad to see. And then also on the same night, Patrick Kane, probably the best player on the Chicago Blackhawks, suffers a broken collarbone and is out 12 weeks. And the sad thing about that is it's 7 weeks until the postseason. So Patrick Kane could be out 5 weeks during the postseason, which would not be good for the Blackhawks because he's obviously the best player on their team. He had the most points in the NHL, tied with Alex Ovechkin, I'm pretty sure. So that's a big loss too. If I had to decide which was a bigger loss for their team, I would say it's definitely the Bulls. Derrick Rose is definitely the bigger loss for the Bulls than Patrick Kane is for the Blackhawks because I feel like the Blackhawks have players with more experience and more talent around them than the Bulls do, and Derrick Rose is the sole leader. Patrick Kane is not the main leader of this team. There's so many leaders. Derrick Rose is the sole leader of this team, so I think it's definitely that loss is definitely more significant to the Bulls than it is to the Blackhawks. They're both very significant, but I think the Derrick Rose one is way more significant. Also in Chicago sports news, Juan Pierre, who played for the Cubs during their 2003 team when they went to the NLCS and lost to the Marlins, is back. No, he's not back. He's retiring. Juan Pierre is retiring from baseball. 14-year career. I know a bunch of people posted on Twitter, including Len Casper, who's the Cubs announcer, said that he has never met someone who is as much of a professional as Juan Pierre. And I think his last stint in the MLB was with the Miami Marlins. So hats off to Juan Pierre. Great career in the MLB. And then also Aramis Ramirez, former Cub, who's currently third baseman for the Milwaukee Brewers, will announce his retirement, or he announced his retirement will end at the end of this season. So another Chicago Cub, great, retiring again. Great career for Aramis and Juan Pierre, both of them nice guys, great for the ball club, great for the clubhouse. So it's going to be sad to see these guys not in the MLB anymore. I mean, they definitely had long careers though, so hats off to both of them. And then One more Chicago guy, Josh McCown, who was cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, has now been signed by the Cleveland Browns with a 3-year deal. I know we were talking about how the Browns organization and the quarterback situation, it's been really tough for them. They've had a lot of issues there, especially with Johnny Manziel and his off-the-field problems. And Josh McCown, I mean, he'll definitely have a shot at the starting job. I'm not saying he's going to win it over Brian Hoyer if he returns or Johnny Manziel. But what he will do for this team is he'll reunite this clubhouse, make them a team again, make them not come out with anonymous statements, and it'll just make them a great team again, or not a great team again, but it'll make them a better unit, a better team. Not like a better team on the field, but a team in the locker room and a better team mentality. So I think that's a great move for the Browns. I think I enjoyed Josh McCown's time while he was with Chicago. He was a great leader, great teammate, and that's exactly what they need in the clubhouse. All right, since my time is short today, I will jump right into Mark's mailbag, and then we'll have a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back to Mark's mailbag. I have a lot of questions this week, actually. First question actually comes in from Clay Schroeder at C_Schroeder24. He asks, when Paul George returns to the starting lineup for the Indiana Pacers, do you see Indiana knocking off a high seed in the playoffs such as Atlanta or Toronto? Now, I was looking at the standings, and currently Indiana is 23-34, but since it is the Eastern Conference, they're only one game out of the 8th seed in the playoffs. So they're right there. They could make the playoffs. Who knows if they'll even make the playoffs. If Paul George returns, it would be in March, which is like right before the playoffs start. And even if they're in the playoffs and Paul George comes back, I don't see them knocking off Atlanta or Toronto. I don't think Toronto's going to hold that 2 seed. I think it would be either Cleveland or Washington or Chicago. But I don't think Toronto's holding on to that 2 seed. I think Cleveland's going to end up taking that. So I think they'd either face Atlanta or Cleveland, and I think Atlanta's too good right now. I think they play as a team. I don't think Indiana's that good. I mean, if you're 23-34, you're not that good. I mean, you always have a chance. It depends on how you go into the playoffs, how hot you are relative to the postseason. And I mean, they're obviously not hot right now, but if they get Paul George back, maybe I don't see them competing with Atlanta or Cleveland. Maybe if it was with a struggling Chicago or Washington or Milwaukee team, but that's not going to happen. So I don't see Indiana moving past the first round, and frankly, I don't even see them making the playoffs. I think Paul George, with an injury like that, you can't just start playing with Paul George. Can't just come back to the all-star Paul George he was last year from that injury. You can't just become an all-star right again. You have to work back at it. And I know Paul George will work back to that all-star form, but I don't see them knocking off a great team like Atlanta or Toronto or Cleveland, because Atlanta has that San Antonio Spurs type team where it's pick your poison. You're either getting Kyle Korver's either scoring a 3 on you, or Paul Millsap's dunking over you, or Al Horford's shooting a baseline jumper. It's pick your poison with that Atlanta team, and I don't think Indiana has the pieces to stop that. So even with Paul George, because you saw them with Paul George in the playoffs last year, they were struggling completely. So I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs, and if they do, I don't see them knocking off Atlanta. All right, I'll be right back after a quick commercial break. So stay tuned. This is Mark My Words with Mark Skoll Jr.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Support comes from Staple, the independent media expo with over 150 exhibitors featuring comics, animation, zines, crafts, games, and art, March 7th and 8th at the Marchesta Hall and Theater. Tickets available at the door. More event information at staple-austin.org. It's Staple, the Independent Media Expo. Welcome back to Mark My Words. I am Mark Skoll. We are currently in Mark's mailbag right now, and the next question comes from Facebook from Kyle Schroeder. The question is, with the new additions for the Padres, the San Diego Padres, can they make the playoffs in 2015? If so, wild card or division champion? I know they made a lot of great moves or supposed great moves in the offseason, signing Justin Upton, Matt Kemp, Will Myers. So their outfield's going to be stacked. And then along with catcher Derek Norris from the Oakland Athletics, signing big game James Shields, and then Brandon Maurer, Sean Kelly, Will Middlebrooks. They got a lot of new guys in this offseason, but I don't see them. I don't think these guys are like really great players and that can compete with a lot of teams in that division, or the two of the top teams in that division. So the two top teams in that division last year were the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants, who were the World Series champions. I think the LA Dodgers are definitely going to finish number one in that division. I mean, they lost Dee Gordon, but they have the best pitching staff in baseball with Clayton Kershaw, Zach Greinke, and Ryu. So I don't see San Diego making, like, I don't think big game James Shields is better than any of those guys. I'd rather have those three guys over him, and he's going to be the number one starter for San Diego. I think San Francisco is, I know it's like an odd even year, so it's not their lucky year to win a World Series, but I know they did lose Pablo Sandoval, but with Madison Bumgarner, Matt Cain, Tim Lincecum, those guys, I don't see San Francisco or the Dodgers backing up or losing any ground on the Padres. I think the Padres will be better next year. I think they'll have they probably won't be under 500 next year. I think their moves were smart. I don't know if they're built to contend next year. If they do make the playoffs, which I don't think they will, they'd definitely be a wild card. I definitely think the Dodgers are going to finish up on top. They had the third best record in Major League Baseball last year, and they had the MVP and Cy Young Award winner Clayton Kershaw and Yasiel Puig in the outfield, and they have a bunch of guys who are developing into young stars. And they replaced Dee Gordon at second base with Kendrick from the Angels, Egon at first. I just don't see them. I don't see the Dodgers are going to win this division for sure. San Francisco, I think they're going to be next, even though they lost Pablo. I think they have so many veterans on that team. They know how to win. Once they get to the postseason, they're just a great team. It's just a matter of getting to the postseason, which I think they will do. San Diego, I don't think those guys are that great. I think Matt Kemp is a little bit, some of it has gone to his head. He thinks he's some great player, but I don't think he's good, obviously, but I don't think he's the best. Right now I have Dodgers, San Francisco. I have it finishing the same as last year. I've had Dodgers finishing first, San Francisco number 2, San Diego 3, but I think they're going to be above 500, maybe making the wild card, a second wild card, but I think the NL Central is too deep for them to get that second wild card spot. And then I see either way, Colorado or Arizona, they're not really that great. They had the two worst records in the MLB, so it's hard to decide who's going to be better there. But right now, I don't think San Diego will be in the playoffs. Great question, Kyle. Now, I'm going to move on to another question from Clay Schroeder at C_Schroeder24. He asks, did the Kyler Murrays happen to get some points on the board in this week's intramural contest? Normally, I update you guys at the beginning of the show. I forgot to this week. So thank you, Clay, for that question. The Kyler Murrays, just want to give you guys some background information on the Kyler Murrays. Our first game, we lost 30-0. Our second game, we lost 40-0. So the odds of us scoring in this next game were not high at all. We never moved the ball in these first two games, and in this last game, last night, we actually won. We actually scored points. It's crazy. When you score points, you actually and play good defense, you actually have a good chance of winning a game. We ended up winning 15-12. Yeah, they did have one guy who didn't show up on their team, so we had a one-man advantage. But a win is a win, and we scored. I'm happy with that. Apparently, it's the first time a TSTV intramural team in any sport has won since last spring. So I'm definitely happy. I made some bad plays in that game when that led to some scores, but I had a couple of bat downs as a cornerback. And what was crazy about the game last night was that it was so cold outside. Like I could barely move my hands. Like my hands were like turning like blue, and I couldn't move them and couldn't squeeze my hands together. So like I could catch these interceptions like any other night, but last night I couldn't because I couldn't like grab the ball, and it was just like and when the ball hit you, it was like a rock just hit you right in the hands. So it was a tough game. We ended up on top 15-12. It came down to the wire. It came down to one last play, but we came up on top. We prevailed. The Kyler Murrays won a football game in the Intramural League. Thanks for all the support. It was a great season. Hopefully next season's better. Thank you, Clay, for checking up on the Kyler Murrays. All right, next question comes in from Steven Strack at Steven Strack on Twitter. He says, actually, two questions. He says, at Mark Skoll Jr., two questions. Number one, who is your MVP in the NBA as of tonight? And number two, which young talent would you like to build a team around in the NBA? All right, for me, right now, they're the two main candidates that everyone's talking about for NBA MVP is James Harden and Stephen Curry. James Harden from the Houston Rockets and Stephen Curry from the Golden State Warriors. And then LeBron James of the Cleveland Cavaliers and Russell Westbrook of the Oklahoma City Thunder have gotten the talks a little bit for MVP talks. And honestly, personally, I think LeBron James is the best player in the NBA by far. He should win MVP every single year. Like, I feel like that's no question. I was looking at the stats last night. He averaged more points than Stephen Curry. He averaged more rebounds, more assists, more everything. So I think he's definitely better. I think they're going to give it to someone else besides LeBron, probably because they don't like to give it to the same guy every year. And LeBron, he should win it every year. He's the best player in the NBA. I mean, I think that's a given. I think right now, like I would say the MVP every year should be LeBron, but as of right now, between the Stephen Curry and James Harden, I would say, and I saw some stat too, is like most MVPs are either on the number one team in the conference or the number 2 or 3 team. So going off that logistics, I don't know if Houston's going to finish in the top 2 or 3 teams. So I'm going to have to give it to right now Stephen Curry. Personally, if it wasn't off of those like statistics, I would probably say James Harden, just because I think James Harden, he scored the most points in the NBA, but the guy doesn't play defense either. I mean, I feel like Stephen Curry plays some defense, but I feel like he can be shut down. I feel like he's not as consistent as James Harden is offensively. So it's honestly tough. So I would probably say Stephen Curry just because his team has a better record right now, and I think they can finish with a better record. But I think a lot of that has to do with coaching. But personally, I think the better players are Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. I would say LeBron James should win it every year, but that's just me. I know people have different opinions, but right now, I would say Stephen Curry, just because his team has the best record and they've been playing the best NBA basketball like this whole season. I mean, if the Cleveland Cavaliers played like they have in the last 20 games the whole season, I think LeBron would easily win it, but that's not the case. And number 2, which young talent would you like to build a team around in the NBA? That's a tough question, too. I think it would also have to be with these 3 guys, not including LeBron, because LeBron's kind of getting up there in age. So I'd have to say it'd be between Stephen Curry, James Harden, or actually, I'm going to say, the thing about James Harden, I think he's a great scorer. He just doesn't do it for me on the defensive side of the ball, and you need defense to win. And that's why they've struggled in the postseason, because they don't have a great defense. And if James Harden's actually played defense, and I've seen so many, there's like a highlight reel of James Harden playing horrible defense. That's how bad this guy is defensively. If he actually played defense, I would definitely want to build around him. I think Stephen Curry can be shut down, but the one guy who I feel like can't be shut down, and I feel like is going to be a monster in this league for the next 12, 15 years, if he plays that long, is Anthony Davis of the New Orleans Pelicans. I think this guy he's got crazy talent. I know he's on a team in New Orleans that's not really that great. He doesn't have that many pieces around him. But if he had the great pieces around him, this guy would thrive anywhere. I mean, he's a little skinny. He's like a little, I know some people were calling him like a KG in his prime. But this guy, he's going to be dominant forever. And the thing is, if he doesn't have it offensively, he has it defensively. If he doesn't have it defensively, he has it offensively. And a lot of times it's both. He has both offense and defense going for him every night. So I would definitely say Anthony Davis would be the young talent I would want to build my team around. I feel like he's the best guy, the best young guy available on the market if I had to build one around those guys. I think Stephen Curry's good. I think he's a great shooter, but you can't teach size. And Anthony Davis is huge. He can put the ball in the hoop. He can block other teams' shots. I feel like that's the guy you would build your team around. All right, next question comes in from Clay Schroeder again, at C_Schroeder24. Thank you for all your questions tonight, Clay. I really appreciate it. And then he says, do you believe Jose Altuve will repeat as MLB batting champion? Oh, that's a tough one. The only thing that's why it's tough is that there's two other guys who are really good alongside Jose Altuve. It's Mike Trout of the Los Angeles Angels and Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers. Miguel Cabrera had that triple crown a couple seasons ago. Mike Trout was MVP last year. I mean, I had the privilege to watch Jose Altuve play at Minute Maid last summer against the Toronto Blue Jays. And this guy, he's something special, let me tell you. And I don't really like the Astros that much either. He's something special. He always, it seems like he's always going 100%, even though if he's going to get out. Like, that's what I like to see. Like, a lot of guys, you see them running the base path, and like when they know they're going to be out, they just jog. But Jose Altuve, he grinds it out, and a lot of times he gets infield singles because he goes that fast. He's such a fast guy. He's such a great player. That's why he gets that batting average up there. So based off of that logic, I would definitely say he has a really good chance at repeating. I think it's going to be tough just because Mike Trout and Miguel Cabrera can do it any given year, but I think Jose Altuve is right in that category. He can do it any given year. So I'll give Jose Altuve the benefit of the doubt. I will say he'll repeat as the MLB batting champion because I don't know the exact statistic, but I think he finished with a .348 batting average, and that is just insane. I mean, don't quote me on that statistic. I don't have it in front of me, but wow, I would definitely I definitely would see him doing that again. He's such a great player. I mean, watching him in person it's a privilege to watch him. I love watching great baseball, and he's definitely one of the guys who's one of those great young baseball talents. All right. I know it was a short 25 minutes, but that does it for me tonight. Thanks for having me on again. This is Mark My Words. Leave your mark on the world and have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, enjoy it. Good night, everybody.